Welcome to The Dish, the culinary travel podcast focusing on the stories behind world-famous foods.
We are your hosts, Tomo and Megzi from foodfuntravel.com. Join us for tasty histories, destination food guides, and more.
In this episode, what is Goan Cuisine? We talk about the history of some of the best dishes to try.
A rich layered dessert with a Portuguese Goan story behind it.
Plus, Goa's favourite hooch, Feni. Okay, hello everybody, welcome to another episode of The Dish.
Hope you're hungry. I know I am. I know where we're going today. It's not a surprise for me. Actually, if you've read the title of this podcast, it's probably not a surprise for you either, but you might not know some of the foods that we're going to be talking about today.
That's it, unless you accidentally just have run on from the previous episode and are going to be surprised. Although there's going to have been a little introduction before we started this telling people what it is, isn't it?
But no, I don't think they'll specifically know the types of food that we're talking about because it's quite a unique place with unique food.
One of them I think they'll definitely know, which we'll mention a bit later on. But yes, today we are visiting India, but very specifically the state of Goa. And Goan cuisine is just completely different from all other Indian cuisine.
Yep, absolutely. We spent 2.5 months-ish traveling around India. And when we hit Goa, we were like, whoa! We were totally surprised by the difference in the cuisine there and very pleasantly surprised, I have to say.
Yeah, it's like a whole different cuisine from the rest of India. I mean, there's lots of variations across India. So, I mean, you'd say Punjabi is very different from South Indian, but it's just Goa's so small. It's like a really, really tiny little coastal state, sort of halfway up the western coast of India. And yet it's like a completely different cuisine.
Well, I think the thing is, possibly, I mean, for me at least, when we decided to head to Goa, we were doing it for a bit of a break from the regular sort of India tourist thing. We knew that it was like a hot spot for tourists to go. So it was like, we'd been doing a lot of off the beaten path sort of stuff. And we knew Goa was like a beach resort sort of place that, you know, is a bit more developed and a little bit more used to tourists coming through. So I expected it to be a little bit more touristy food, you know, when you're going to just get more of your burgers and, you know, club sandwiches and stuff like that. You know, I was expecting it to be a bit more touristy. I wasn't expecting it to be its own little unique cuisine in itself.
Yeah. But of course, it makes sense that every part of India before tourism turned up had their own food.
Of course.
And so that's fortunate that when you go to Goa, you can still very easily access the traditional cuisine and you're not going to be just pounded with tourist food. So yeah, which is fantastic because I love Goan cuisine. It's probably after Punjabi Goan cuisine. That's probably my two favorite types of Indian food. Mm-hmm. But that's so many things. It's hard to really pin it down to two things. It's cruel and mean to even say such a thing.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's too big and too vast to even put numbers on it.
Yes. But of course, Goan cuisine, just like any cuisine around the world, really is a very rich combination of its history and its environment. Being located in a tropical part of India, right on the coastline, you'll find a lot of seafood. There's lots of rice and plenty of coconuts and coconut milk type dishes going on.
Mm-hmm.
Its exact position on the Indian subcontinent led to a tradition of curries, because, of course, there's lots of different spices in India and they got thrown around, and curries are a traditional type of food. So not surprisingly, that affected Goa very much. But Goa's colonial past, being ruled by the Portuguese for quite a few hundred years, that is actually one of the things that created the most exciting blending of this sort of East meets West situation. So yeah, you've got all the Indian influences, you've got the local, just that's what they happen to have on the ground. They've got these fruits, these vegetables, this is what they got. And yeah, then you've got the Portuguese as well. And it's completely different because Portugal just brought a whole variety of cooking styles and different ingredients that they wanted people to use and dishes they wanted to emulate.
Yeah, I think it was just a much different influence than what the British brought on the rest of India. So that's the thing. It's quite unique because of that Portuguese influence.
Yeah, that's right, because most of the rest of India was all ruled by the English, and it's just this one tiny little state that was ruled by the Portuguese for a while. So yeah, definitely a unique culinary destination. And on the whole, you're going to find, of course, those curry dishes, but with this Portuguese twist. So this sort of thing like they use pork, whereas most of the rest of the country don't use pork. It's because actually 95% of the population of Goa are Christians, whereas most of the rest of India are Hindus or Muslims or Sikhs. So that makes a really big difference. They're actually getting pork dishes. And lots of use of vinegar. They have lots of very sour and spicy dishes because vinegar in cooking is something, and wine in cooking is something that the Portuguese do all the time. And so they sort of inherited that. They didn't have a lot of wine there because it's really hot and they can't make wine. So they started using vinegar as a replacement for wine for some dishes. But we'll get into some of that as we go along. Some other Goan dishes, aside from the curries, are quite clearly just adaptations of traditional Portuguese dishes using whatever they could get locally or whatever was being imported cheaply. So you've got dishes like feijoada, which is the classic Portuguese pork and bean stew. That's actually something you will find in Goa, although it might not be something you find very easily. But it's a cheap and simple dish. So
Absolutely.
it's something people are eating, and that's a dish that you'd find in Portugal and in Brazil and lots of other colonies. And also they have Goan sausage, which is very similar to Portuguese chorizo. So,
and it was yum.
And although there's loads of different ingredients that make up the taste of Goan cuisine and make things taste like local dishes, there's two really essential ones, in my opinion, from doing all the research on this and actually seeing how these dishes are made. These seem to be the ones that are like, this is Goan food if you've got this in it. Coconut vinegar, specifically, and also rechelado masala. Just quickly talk about coconut vinegar first, because obviously the reason they have this is because coconuts are super easy to find.
Yeah, look up a tree.
There it is.
Actually, look at the bottom of a tree. They're there too.
So apparently they're making vinegar from coconuts.
I'd never heard of that.
I really didn't know how they do this, and I haven't gone into huge amounts of depth because we have a lot to cover in this episode, but that is apparently the thing that they're doing. They're, I guess they leave it to ferment, just like you would with anything else, just like you would with old white wine that had gone off, and then what's left is vinegar. So, yeah.
Interesting.
I assume it's a similar sort of process.
Well, I guess it's kind of the influence, because don't they have that, there's like out in the backwaters, they've got a coconut toddy thing that they have. So I guess maybe it was like sort of an influence from the toddies, that alcoholic coconutty drink
because like any alcohol like that, eventually it would go off and turn into vinegar. It's possible. I mean, toddy is definitely something you can find in Goa, but it's actually more traditionally from Kerala.
Yeah, it is.
And further south. So, yeah, but we'll definitely talk about some alcohol-based stuff later on, which might lead us to figure some of this out.
Yay, booze!
Yeah, there's always got to be some sort of booze, especially in Goa. There's definitely some booze. So the fact that it's made from coconut, just like any type of vinegar, you've always got those flavors that were with the original product. So white wine vinegar tastes a little bit winey and malt vinegar tastes a little bit malty.
Oh!
So not surprisingly, using coconut vinegar in dishes adds a slight tropical hint to any dish. But the most important ingredient that I think it sort of defines a lot of Goan food, not everything, but a lot of things, is the rechado masala, which is a red Goan spice mix paste, which is used to create the flavors like as a base for curries, and it's also used as stuffing inside sort of fish and those sort of things.
It's very red.
It's very, 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 very red. The word recheado is Portuguese for stuffing.
Ah, there you go.
To be stuffed. So that's where it comes from. So once again, straight away, the mix, it's like it's a Goan spice with lots of local Goan spices in it, but it's a Portuguese word pretty much. Masala, obviously not. That's an Indian word.
Yes.
So, yeah, the spice mix actually gained its name due to how the spices were used. So, yeah, as I said, they stuff this inside fish. They do use it for lots of other things, but a very simple dish is just to grill a fish with this paste stuffed inside it.
Yep.
And that's it. So super, super easy. And that's how it ended up with the name. So the red color, of course, comes from ground red chilies. Not surprisingly, this is a spicy paste. Some of the other important ingredients that are in it are cumin, cloves, cinnamon, black pepper, garlic, and a bit of the coconut vinegar straight away. And also to balance all that out, they put palm jaggery, or today they actually use cane sugar quite a lot of the time because it's a lot cheaper. But this thing, palm jaggery, is another ingredient that's quite important. It's like the traditional sweet, sugary thing. They used to make these really dense blocks. Well, they still make them today. So they mix sugar with palm sap from the local date palms, which is also sweet.
Yep.
They mix those two things together. It turns into like this hard block of sweetness, and you just chip bits off the outside and you throw it in. And it's sort of different from just having straight up sugar. So the blend of spices of the rachado masala give this really distinct Goan taste. And it's different from other sorts of curries in other parts of India. Because, I mean, you think about what's missing from this. They don't have ginger in it. They don't have paprika. They don't have cardamom. They don't have coriander. It's like, so, I mean, they use fresh coriander, but they don't have ground coriander powder in this spice. And these are all typical things that you expect in Indian food in other parts of India.
Yeah.
So it's very specific. Like, these are the spices we use. This is our blend. This is how we do it. Though sour is the main sort of flavor you'll find in a lot of dishes, the other sort of varieties of curries that are not sour will be the coconut-based ones, something like kaldin, which is more at the sweet end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
So not everything spicy, but yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I was surprised to find that quite spicy and quite sour.
Yeah.
Compared to other curries we'd had around the country.
For a lot of the dishes, and we'll get into some of those specific dishes as we get through this, and we might identify some reasons why this happened. So other local ingredients, just very quickly, associated with the sour flavor and the sweet and sour flavors. Kukum is a fruit that's similar to a mangosteen. So they use that in some of the dishes.
Mangosteen.
Yeah.
Messy. So messy.
Crazy.
Oh, but love it.
It actually has like a sweet and sour flavor. So it's a little bit more sour than a mangosteen, which is quite sweet, really, but with a tiny bit of sourness. This has a bit more sourness to it. And also tamarind, which people may have heard of before, very popular across all of tropical Asia and South India, although apparently it actually originated in Africa.
Oh, actually, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think I've read that before.
So yeah, the tamarind, if you might know the paste, if you haven't actually seen it, it's weird. It's like a weird brown hanging long fruit. It looks like a weird lumpy.
Is it like a gourd, kind of like a weird
almost,
gourd,
but just smaller.
Small, yeah. I don't know. They're very strange.
That's very strange and super, super sour, but such a distinctive sourness. Like when something's got tamarind in it, you can really taste it. So let's talk about some typical dishes. Now, the most famous one and probably the one that everyone's heard of, or almost everyone's heard of, is of course vindaloo.
Yes.
So
the late night snack of a drunken Brit.
Or the late night massive meal of a drunken Brit.
Yeah, not quite a snack.
1 in the morning. Yeah, it's pretty filling stuff. Of course, in England, it's normally served ludicrously spicy, like over the top, way too spicy. It's like a challenge to eat it.
Is it like you're just trying to like sweat out the booze?
I think it's just drunk people being like, oh, I can eat hotter than you.
Yeah,
seriously. I used to work in a Bangladeshi restaurant in England. They used to make vindaloo, and there was this other dish that's hotter than vindaloo called fal, which is literally twice as hot as vindaloo. And English vindaloo is already much hotter than Goan vindaloo, or any of the Goan vindaloos we had. And they would just come in like once every couple of months, and it would be who could finish the dish first. They ordered 4 portions of fal, rice, that was it, and beer. And yeah, whoever could finish the dish first won like curry.
Was like hero of the
legend.
night.
Yeah, curry legend of the night. Yeah, we weren't running this competition. They literally just, the 4 of them kept coming in to do this, just to show off who could win. So yeah, it was like a big challenge thing. But if you didn't know, I mean, it's very popular in England, but it's actually a Goan dish. It's not just Indian in general or anything. It's specifically from Goa.
Yeah, because I mean, I think we've discussed in a previous episode where like chicken tikka masala is actually
probably invented in Scotland.
Yeah, so there are a few dishes, curries that have actually been invented in like Great Britain in some way, but this one, vindaloo, is very much actually comes from India.
Yeah, so we are going to go probably on a full episode on vindaloo because I think there'll be a fun and interesting story to that. Mm-hmm. So just saying, it's definitely one of the most important dishes to try, so look out for it. And we'll probably do a full episode on chicken tikka masala as well, or butter chicken, or both.
Yeah.
Because they're both really famous dishes that may or may not really have been invented in India, but then taken back to India. So we're going to do a bit of investigation on that. Don't know for sure right now, not 100% because we haven't done full research, but definitely some stories there.
Could be quite a dull tale.
Yeah, it could be terrible, and then we won't do it at all, but we'll see. Let's talk about another dish, ambottik. It's a sour and spicy curry which combines red chilies and the kokum, which I talked about, the fruit that's actually naturally sweet and sour. They mix that up with tomatoes, onions, and some masala powder to make the sauce, and they throw loads of fish in with this, specifically shark. And this was interesting, like something that we had down that western coast. Mm-hmm. You could get shark. We had like tikka shark, like just roasted in the tandoori oven.
And it was quite frequently spicy.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you haven't ever had shark before, it's got a little bit of a different texture to your standard fish.
I mean, I would call it like the pork of fish.
Yeah, it's a little meatier.
Firm, it's meaty, like swordfish and shark, both very sort of firm, white flesh, white-grey flesh. So yeah, if you looked at it from a distance, you'd think it could just be cubes of pork.
Yeah.
When it's cooked. When it's not cooked, it's
quite
it
obviously
looks like fish.
a fish. Yeah.
But yeah, when actually cooked, it sort of goes like that. But
yeah, certainly interesting to try a bit of shark if you're in India. It's certainly a unique experience.
Yeah. So that's one to look out for. Ambot tik. We're going to get through a few. Some of these dishes have more stories than other, but a few just to start off with that are just dishes you should look out for, that you should try, that don't have a specific story behind them. Zakuti is actually spelled with an X, so Xacuti. This dish is usually made either with chicken or pork and has a pretty complex sauce which incorporates some unusual Indian spices, including white poppy seeds, and sliced or grated coconut, and lots of red chilies.
Of course.
Of course. Sometimes they use crab in this rather than chicken or pork. So it's like crab curry. Sort of interesting. And sometimes they thicken the sauce up with eggs.
That would make sense.
So just like mix a bit of egg in and it sort of, just goes a bit thicker.
Yeah, because there was this one restaurant, because we stayed in Goa for a bit, actually. We got a nice little beachfront bungalow sort of hut thing, and we pretty much found this one restaurant that we fell in love with, and we're like, we're just going to go back and work our way down the menu. And I remember that dish was one of my favorites. It was very good. They also made an amazing naan bread.
I think they are still there. I did a quick look on Google Maps. They've updated the hotel a lot, so I don't know if the kitchen will be the same guys cooking.
It was a while ago. This is like 5 years ago we were there.
I'll try and remember to add a link in the article, because there's a full article on Goan food that we've put together at foodfuntravel.com/goanfood, Goan. And I'll see if I can put the link into that restaurant.
So you can see a few of the pictures of the food that we took while we were there, and you can see, I think one of the dishes, it does look like it could have been thickened with eggs from memory of the pictures we got up there. But yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, the crazy thing is that everyone does their recipe a little bit differently. So with these, it's like trying to find recipes that are the same. It's like, no, this person's adding this, this person's adding this. There's no it's not like Bologna where this is the exact recipe and you will never deviate from this. This is the official recipe in the official guide to Bologna. Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, Zakuti, definitely one to look out for. Another really interesting dish that is crazy spicy and crazy sour. It's called balchao. And unlike vindaloo, this was, it's like thick sauce. It's deep, dark, intense red, and lots of chili and lots of vinegar. I mean, once again, I've seen different recipes, but the one we had
was intense.
Like, it was so thick and so dark.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I found some information as to why that happened, why that dish is like that. So when we went out to discover this dish, we actually were touring the area in some of the smaller villages away from the tourist beaches. We got on a scooter and we headed out there, and we just saw this little roadside restaurant. We didn't really know what we were looking for. We just went, well, he's got food. And there's a couple of locals in there, so why not? Always a good reason to try something. And, well, we were hungry. That helps.
It does help. It's quite a common occurrence.
Yeah, happens a lot. So, yeah, we're just like, what have you got on the menu that we haven't tried before? Oh, okay, what's this? Balchao. Had no idea what that was going to be. And he was like, well, it's spicy. And we're like, that's fine.
Bring it.
We'll do it. So read up a bit about this. It's actually got a bit of a complicated history, a little bit of an interesting one, this one. It's believed that the dish, it didn't come from Goa specifically. The main theory goes that actually Portuguese sailors brought certain types of shrimp paste originally to Macau from Southeast Asia. This is getting really weird and complicated straight away, right? So Macau didn't necessarily have this type of shrimp and fish paste until the Portuguese turned up with it to Macau around about 1557. So this dish could have been created initially in Macau, not in Goa. So, but it gets
when did the Portuguese colonize or take over Goa?
Yeah, around about the same time.
Okay,
16th century. So they were doing all of their major explorations around the 16th century, and that's where they went, and they got Goa, and they went to Macau as well, and a few other places. Malaysia, I believe, was one of them, and yeah, I can't remember all of them. Didn't write them all down, but definitely Macau and Goa were two of the important ones. So what happened was they turned up to Macau with shrimp paste, and the locals were like, okay, we can use this, but obviously we don't want to pay to import it all the time, so maybe we can make our own. So this spurned the creation of a local shrimp paste in Macau called balichao. It's almost the same word.
Mm-hmm.
And it became a really popular sauce for making certain dishes, including porco balichao tamarindo, which is a pork and tamarind stew with this shrimp paste mixed in. So it's very much like a bit of a Portuguese dish that then they were adding fish paste and tamarind to.
Yep.
So it actually had some very similar characteristics. This was a really spicy, salty, and sour dish. And it's believed that it was, or something similar, or the concept at least, was transported back to Goa from Macau by the Portuguese sailors who had tried it in Macau. And they didn't take the shrimp paste, though. So they took the name and they took the stewing up some pork in this really thick sauce with some tamarind, making it sour. And of course, they may be switching this out to be using vinegar in Goa, even though they have both. So you may be using a bit of both, depending on the recipe. And yeah, they took this back and then started making it Goa. They're like, well, I like this dish from Macau. Can you make it here? How would you make it? Oh, it's roughly like this. Don't have any shrimp paste. Fine. Okay. We'll just make it like this really thick, strong dish. So the idea of the really thick sauce is apparently they can actually keep seafood in it for a few days without refrigeration. So that's sort of what it is. So it's like this really dense sour sauce. They're effectively pickling the fish or shrimp that they put in it so that it will last for a few days, and then they just reheat it whenever they want to eat it.
Okay, we did find that a few times where they had certain cooking preparations and methods were purely to give it longevity.
Yeah, so it can just be preserved for a few days.
Yeah.
So yeah, to handle that tropical heat in a time where there was no refrigeration and no ice supply either. What are we going to do? We've got lots of shrimp that was caught today. We can't eat it all. We need to preserve it. So this is one way to do it. So apparently that's what happened.
Cool.
Yeah, so quite a weird, a very weird story. But yeah, the name seems so connected and the style seems so connected that people think it's definitely based on the same thing.
From Macau.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And that's just it's a really good story to show how trading changed everything.
Yeah, it
so
really
quickly.
did.
So yeah. All right, on to another dish. This one is called caldin or caldine, which I mentioned earlier is a bit of a milder curry. So often served with prawns or can have fish. And I found this really tasted quite similar to Thai curry. It was like a yellow curry.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, light and coconutty and pretty tasty. But yeah, it's made with the sweet and sour kokum fruit, or it's supposed to be. Who knows? People making it cheaply in restaurants might just be using vinegar and sugar.
Yeah.
I mean, you just don't know. Or tamarind and sugar. So yeah, it's a creamy, coconutty, sweet and sour taste. It's got all of those flavor groups that you would have in Thai cuisine.
Yeah, and it was a little bit of a reprieve from the heavier sort of curries that
the intense, spicy, sour.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want something light and you're not looking to try those crazy intense curries, caldin is definitely the one you want to go for. Another dish I mentioned right at the start that is quite obviously a fusion dish of Portuguese and Goan is the feijoada. Of course, this is the traditional Portuguese dish of pork and beans that's slow cooked. But what they did to make it Goan is instead of making it in like a tomato-y sauce, in a stew sauce, or using wine, they're using coconut milk and tamarind as the base.
Mm-hmm.
Pork, beans, coconut, and tamarind. Totally sort of different. I mean, it's a heavy comfort food, but the flavor that's completely different from just the salty, heavy comfort food thing that you get from the Portuguese version.
And it is so funny that they do have a lot of these, because a lot of these curries are a little bit, full flavored and thicker sauces, and which seems like a really crazy concept to have in a place that's so freaking hot.
Yeah.
But it actually works. I don't know. It's like this, you put so much heat into your body that it all
sweat it out.
Yeah, it just sweats everything out. It works to have this heat in a really hot climate. I don't know. It works. It's fine. But yeah, it's a bit odd.
But yeah, the feijoada won't be spicy. It's not supposed to be. I mean, people might make it spicy, but yeah, some of these other dishes that we talked about, definitely spicy. And I mean, it's that old story that the reason they add chili to things is because they're using old meat or old fish and it covers up the flavor.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it just basically takes a dish that otherwise has very little use of other spices and just makes it hot. So that just covers up everything.
Yeah.
So maybe that's 100% true. Maybe that's not 100% true. I don't know. But yeah, it's definitely one reason to make things really, really spicy. Some other dishes that aren't sort of stew or curry based. I mentioned at the start, fish recheado, which is the fish stuffed with the recheado masala and just grilled on the barbecue. Super simple. Yep. You got all the flavors of Goa. Nice, fresh grilled fish. Done. Or also another one you can look for, cafrial, which are chicken legs coated in a very thick and dark spicy paste and then fried, and the sauce sort of just clings to the outside of the skin.
And you can't go wrong with that.
No.
No, not at all.
It's totally, totally fine. As we mentioned before, Goan sausage, which is the Goan version of Portuguese chorizo. Really not a lot to say on this. It's very similar to Portuguese chorizo, except I found most of the ones we had were softer. Because apparently something else we learned when I went to Mallorca, more humidity means the sausages don't dry out. So you don't have that really dry cured sausage, and so it's probably very difficult to dry cure a sausage in Goa.
For sure.
Yeah. Super humid. So you're going to have a softer sausage that's been cured. And we actually ended up having this on a pizza.
Yeah, we did.
And it was awesome. Because we were staying in Palawan Beach in the south part of Goa. And I think after spending almost 3 months in India at that point, we were like, it's fine to have some pizza. We don't have to have curry every day.
I ate that pizza, and I also ordered they had these great spinach and mushroom burgers that they were making on the beach. And I was like, yes, please. Because you don't have to have a curry every day. Don't feel guilty, people. It's fine.
Their spinach and mushroom burgers on the beach. I wish I knew what that place was called. This is like, the internet was so bad in India when we were there. We couldn't really work or do anything when we were in Goa. We literally just sat around trying to do things on our blog.
We swam and did stuff offline pretty much.
Yeah, which was great. It was nice.
Meg starts looking up tickets back to Goa.
Yeah.
Although I'm sure the internet's improved a lot in the last 5 years.
It probably has. So that was cool having it on a pizza. You can also just order the sausage just cooked and then you just eat it, but that's a lot of sausage.
It is a lot. It was nice on the pizza. I liked it on the pizza.
Sausage on pizza. Yeah, did a pretty good job of it. Definitely, this has not been an exhaustive list of Goan cuisine, but you can check out foodfuntravel.com/Goa podcast and find out a little bit more about our trip to Goa and some of the other foods that you can try. But to finish up this episode, and I say finish up because actually these are the two big stories. We've rattled through quite a few things, but actually dessert and drinks are the two big stories for this episode with some fun histories behind them. So first of all, let's get our booze on.
Booze time!
Let's talk about Feni, which is made from cashew nuts or sometimes from coconuts. And this one we discovered just because we were staying at these beach huts. We mentioned before, we stayed right on the beach. We were actually paying like $18 a night to stay in this beach hut.
Yeah, beachfront, beach with a balcony. They were basic.
It was basic, but, it had a shower and it filled up with sand all the time.
Because it was very much beachfront.
It was very beach, but we were actually on the first floor, so we had a balcony that overlooked the whole beach, which was really cool. And yeah, it was a nice way to chill after all of the insanity of like the big cities of India, going to Calcutta and Delhi and all these other places. So just coming to the beach was really nice. And it was the end of the season, and that's the other reason it was super cheap. We went in like late April, early May.
Yeah.
Things were starting to close down, but it meant we got like super discounts.
And actually back then they actually physically dismantled the beach huts. We had one of the last standing beach huts actually, because they pull it down for storm season, for monsoons and stuff like that. They just pull them all down and then they build them all back up again. Yeah. I'm sure honestly, I'd have to have a look to see if they have more permanent structures there now.
I think like some of the hotels are made of stone.
Yeah.
Some of them now, so they got stone buildings. But it was a mix. There was a few stone buildings and there was a few less permanent huts that they would pull down. And we actually saw people pulling these down as we were there. So we're like, lucky we didn't stay in that place because that place is closed now. Very closed. The huts are gone.
Yep.
So pretty crazy. Yeah, two of the really cool things that I remember from the balcony was when they turned up with a whole Bollywood film crew and started filming just outside our apartment.
Yeah, they did. That was crazy. We just sat on the balcony watching them do their dancing and everything on the beach. It was incredible.
Yeah, huge, like super lights because they were filming at like sunset and just after sunset, and a massive crowd, locals and tourists, just jumping around and getting really excited about the fact this film crew was there. And it was the full Bollywood experience. They were doing all the dancing, all the moves, all the miming. I'm sure they sing the songs for real somewhere and then they dub them on. But, yeah, it was super cool. I love that. One of the other cool experiences that is more relevant to food is us drinking the Feni, the cashew-based spirit, up on the balcony and just sitting there watching the sunset and trying this stuff out.
Yeah, and it was highly recommended by, quite a few people, both, locals and expats that were living in the area and stuff like that. And so I think we just mixed it with lemonade, didn't we?
Yeah, I think one of the girls who was working at the apartment said, like, yeah, you can get this, and what we do is we mix it with lemonade. But like traditional lemonade, not like Sprite.
Yeah,
you can mix it with Sprite, but they have like a yellow lemonade that's more lemony.
Yeah.
And they like to mix it with that. Apparently, you can also mix it with Coke. But anyway, let's talk about what exactly is Feni. Cashews actually didn't turn up in Goa until the Portuguese introduced cashews from Brazil. So they'd already gone up to Brazil, and then they turned up to Goa in around 1560 with cashews.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere around 1560 to 1565, and perfect climate for growing them. So cashew nuts became a big old thing in Goa, and they used them in food, and they used them to make this spirit. Prior to cashews turning up, it's almost certain they use coconuts to make the spirit instead, because people still needed their booze.
Yep.
So they would have been using coconuts, and then suddenly they went, we got all these cashews, what are we going to do with these? They still make coconut Feni today, so it's like you can have coconut Feni or Feni. If it's just Feni, then it's cashew Feni normally, but you should check with the person you're buying it off because you never really know. And it's actually now a geographically protected product of Goa since 2009. So it was when we were there as well, but we didn't realize. They obviously weren't publicizing it as much, but yeah. So it's not made from cashew nuts, though. So I think this is really what happened, because coconut spirits are made from coconut. The cashew nuts are being used for something else because they're a premium product, but the cashew fruit is just waste, really, otherwise. I think you might be able to use cashew fruit for some other stuff, but I don't think it's like a popular ingredient in food or anything. So they've got all of this fruit, and the actual cashew nut itself, I don't know if you've ever seen a photo of cashews.
No, I'm literally looking this up right now.
Yeah. So it's like this light red, yellowish fruit, and the actual cashew nut is attached to the bottom of the fruit. So it hangs on the tree, and then there's this little packaging, as it were, that's roughly the shape of a cashew nut that encases the actual nut. And literally that's the nut. So you take that, you break that little bit off the bottom and you open it, and that's your cashew nut.
What? That's weird.
Yep.
Look, some of these look like they have little angry man faces on them.
Yeah, it's really strange. It's got this little hook, just hangs off the bottom of the fruit. And that's where the cashew nut is.
All right, you guys are going to have to Google this. Jump on your phones right now and look up cashew fruit. Because if you haven't seen this before, it's like weird looking mushrooms, red mushrooms hanging from a tree.
Yeah, it's like alien fruit.
Yeah.
It's pretty strange. And you got all this fruit left over once they've harvested the nuts. What are you going to do with it? Well, in the traditional method of making cashew Feni, the cashew apples are de-seeded and then they are dropped into the stomping area.
Hey.
Which is just a big old rock basin cut into some rock.
Actually, they look like capsicums.
Yeah.
They're like capsicums with little nubs on the end.
Capsicums with a hook on the bottom full of cashew. Yeah. The cashew apples are then stomped to release the juice in the same way as you would if you're making wine or whatever. So, yeah, pretty smart, obvious solution to get the juice out, though. Although today, like a modern production, they just use a press because everyone just uses a press these days.
Yeah, it's easier.
So, yeah, they get the juice out and that's transferred into a large earthen pot called kodem, which is buried halfway in the ground and then left for the juice to ferment for several days. So very similar to any sort of traditional winemaking production. We just put it in a pot.
Put it in the ground, let it do its thing.
Let it just sit there until it turns into booze. These earthen pots today, of course, they've been replaced by plastic drums, blah, 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 modern production, you know. The juice is actually only fermented for about 3 days. I don't know if this is because the temperature is so warm there that it ferments very quickly, or if it's just that cashew fruit ferments a lot quicker than wine would, than grapes would. I don't know why, but apparently it's very quick. They don't need to add any yeast to it because apparently it's either just natural yeast from the air or whatever.
On the skins?
It's just there, or on the skins. I'm not quite sure. I didn't get any information on that. And this fermented liquid after 3 days that they have is called niro. And this is then distilled, sometimes double distilled, sometimes triple distilled. The first distillate of the fermented niro is called orak, which sounds very similar to the word arak, which is another very popular alcoholic beverage from
distilled beverage as well.
That, yeah, another spirit, but I don't know if the word has any similarity or connection to arak. And this comes out, the first distillation, only about 15% alcohol. So, I mean, what you're making here, you're not making wine. You're basically making like cashew fruit beer, pretty much. It's going to be like 5% alcohol or something. You could drink it. It's probably not very pleasant. And then that urak that has been made to 15% is mixed with some of the original niro. They don't distill all of it at once. They mix the two together and then they distill it again, apparently.
Oh.
Which I found strange, but I read a few sources on this and they all seem to think that's how it's done. I hope that's the correct information. And then when that's redistilled, that turns into cajulo or cajulo, which is about 40 to 42%. So just your straight up moonshine right there.
Yep.
That is then, if they want to triple distill, they mix that again with the urak. So they take the second stage and put them together, and then they triple distill to get a final like 45% or above.
Weird.
Feni. Apparently that's how it's done. I read some very detailed articles on this, and that seems to be the process. Commercial Feni today, though, is normally just the double distilled stuff. It's quite unusual to find the triple distilled stuff. Maybe some local artisans are making it. It's not something that we saw. And the finished product is, of course, transparent, but they even occasionally age this in oak barrels, and then you get your classic golden tinted aged Feni. Now, there are actually like 4,000 distilleries for Feni in Goa, and Goa's a really small place. 4,000 is the estimate, but about 70% of all of those distilleries and all of the production is actually just home and family use.
Okay, so everyone's got a little, like, still in their backyard.
Yeah, so everyone's distilling at home. Maybe they sell a few bottles on the street. Maybe they sell a few bottles to tourists or friends, but it's not like professional
just a little
production.
bit of home hooch.
Yeah, lots of home hooch. So yeah, I'm sure they're having a good old time in the villages. We weren't in the villages at night. We only went out there just during the day, so I don't know what people will be up to, but sounds like there's a lot of Feni going on. And apparently the traditional way to do it, rather than having it with lemonade, is you just drink it neat with some grilled fish on the side.
Yeah.
That's how you're supposed to be doing it. So yeah, sounds pretty tasty. Mixing it with lemonade or Coke is an option that they recommend to tourists, and some locals do, because, I mean, some of it's pretty strong and pretty rough.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Other of it's good. So.
Yeah, it helps balance out that flavor a little bit. But no, it was quite an enjoyable beverage.
Yeah, and either way, no matter how you drink it, I think if you're drinking with a sunset balcony with the beach and the sun going down,
can't go wrong.
I don't think you can go too wrong with that, can you? All right, our final dish of the day is called bebinka or bebinca. I think it's bebinka, though.
Okay.
I can get the exact pronunciation. But this is regarded by many sources that I read as the only truly Goan dessert. I'm not sure if that claim is just marketing or not, because it seems unlikely. There's not like loads and loads of desserts in Goa.
No.
And a lot of the other desserts are things like rice pudding that's spiced, and that seems just Indian, so it's not difficult to say that it's Goan.
I mean, it's hard to even get to dessert when you're eating Indian food. And, you know, Indians have a large array of sweets that they are sweet crazy. I don't know how they ever get around to it, because, like, after you had rice and naan and curry and Feni and everything, is like, I don't have room for dessert, but
paratha and all these other breads,
all just slathered in butter and yums.
Yeah. I don't know how you make it desserts, but
they got desserts everywhere in India, that's for sure.
Yeah, but although apparently in Goa, they have lots of things, but yeah,
but they're Indian, not so much Goan. Yeah,
apparently.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is true, but yeah, it's a good little marketing statement. But it's believed to have been invented in Goa specifically, but not by a Goan person, but by a Portuguese immigrant. She was actually a nun at the Santa Monica convent in Old Goa, and it's a layered cake. Originally, it started with 7 layers, which were meant to represent the 7 hills of Lisbon. So it's very specifically like a dish to reminisce about home, apparently. When it was first tasted, the other people at the institution, some of the stories say like other nuns, some are saying like the bishop or something was there and she took the thing to him.
Yep.
And he was like, this is great, but some more layers would be even better. So get on it and go make me a new cake.
And she's like, fine, I'm
Fine.
grateful. Just make you a cake.
I don't really do a lot else with my time. I read stuff like the Bible and sit around and it's hot. So yeah, why not? I'll just make another cake.
All right.
I'm sure they weren't too busy. It's debated as to what the best amount of layers are, and there's lots of different recipes. So obviously 7 is the minimum, that's the original, and up to 24 layers perhaps. So these can be very thin, because this gets to be a big cake with just lots of very thin layers. Now, the crazy thing about this dessert is that each single layer is baked individually. So it can take up to 8 hours to make it.
She did have a lot of time on her hands, apparently.
Yeah.
And what's in between the layers?
So I'm going to explain the exact dish because it's actually really interesting and quite surprising that this is how they figured out how to make this dish.
Okay.
I literally don't think I've ever heard of this type of process for making a cake before. Really weird. So every layer is made with flour, coconut milk, sugar, butter ghee, and egg yolk. And sometimes they add a bit of nutmeg or cardamom. Or sometimes they just have it more plain. So it's an option. And actually, it's a multicolored layer cake. So you'll have one layer that's yellow, the next layer brown, the next layer yellow, and it's just like, it's 2 colors, 2 tones.
Yep.
And that's the whole thing. So what they do is they make all the ingredients made the same, but half of the mixture is added, they add caramel to it to give it a dark brown color.
Yeah.
And the other half just stays yellowy, egg yolky color.
Plain cake.
So yeah, you got this yellow-brown multi-layer cake. It actually looks sort of cool. But what's really crazy is how they actually cook these layers to add them together. So the reason it can take like 8 hours to cook is because each very thin layer, and maybe a layer is sort of around 1/2 centimeter thick or 1/8 of an inch, something like that. They can't assemble the layers after baking. They can't just bake 20 slices of cake and then put them together because they'll be too brittle. They're really thin. They just fall apart. You wouldn't even be able to get them out of the pan. Plus, they wouldn't fuse together into this sort of cakey, puddingy thing.
Yeah, because that's actually what I was envisioning.
Yeah, but they would be so thin, they would break. It would be rubbish. So what they actually do is the first layer is poured in, they put it in the oven for 15 minutes, and as soon as it's gone firm, they put a layer of butter on top of that to keep the layers sort of separating, and then they pour the next color of batter on top, and then they bake that for 15 minutes until it's cooked, layer of butter, next layer on top. And as you can see, once you've done that 24 times, 15 minutes per layer, that can be like almost 8 hours of baking.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is insane to make one
just
dessert.
Constantly by the oven for the entire time.
In tropical heat. This sounds like the worst sort of cooking to have to do.
I don't think she was happy with that bishop. She would have been like, ungrateful, I made it for the 7 hills of Lisbon and you want me to make more layers and you stand by the oven all day.
Yeah, you do this, Bishop. What a crazy dessert. But it's really, really, really popular in Goa, although today a lot of the versions you get are manufactured production, and apparently the quality is not great. So most people are like, if it's not being homemade, it's not so great, but it's still such an important dessert that, it's quite easy to find, and people will definitely get it, especially at Christmas. It's a very popular sort of Christmas dessert. So yeah, really, I literally have never heard of baking done like that before.
No, that's intense.
Pretty unique. Anyway, that wraps it up for our Goan food episode. Of course, we're going to talk about Vindaloo in another episode at some point. That could be a few months away, though. I'm not quite sure when we're going to do that.
Yep.
And it's almost Christmas, so next time we're going to be doing some Christmas stuff. Talking about some Christmas food in our Christmas special episodes.
Get you all drooling and, ready for some Christmas feasting.
I like Christmas dinner. I'm a fan, so I'm looking forward to hearing about Christmas dinner and how that all works and the history and stuff. So that's it for this episode. Thanks again for listening. Of course, rate and review. If you enjoy the show, leave 5 stars. If you don't enjoy the show, I don't know how you're still here. It's crazy. So obviously you made it this far. So it's got to be 5 stars. I mean, 4 stars, it doesn't work. People say it works. It doesn't work. It knocks you down the ratings, and we don't get new listeners. We don't do more shows. That's how it works. It's a problem for us. So
give us 5 stars for Christmas.
Yeah, 5 stars for Christmas is a good choice. All right, and of course, subscribe if you haven't done that already. Whatever platform you're on, just subscribe away, and then you'll get notifications of new episodes. You know how this works.
Yeah, and also just tell a friend. You got a foodie friend? Tell them about our show. Be like, you know what you want to hear about? You know how you're going on that trip to India? Have a listen to this show.
Exactly. lots of interesting dishes to try, and some cool factoid knowledge to just share at your next dinner party about whatever dish that you made. You make yourself your own bibinka cake, and it takes you 8 hours to bake it, and you can explain to everybody what a legend you are for spending 8 hours in the kitchen baking it. That could work. All right, we'll see you on the next episode of The Dish. Thanks for listening to The Dish. Don't forget to subscribe and keep this podcast on the air by giving us a 5-star review on your preferred podcast app or channel.
Also, come join our foodie community on Facebook in the Food Worth Travelling For Facebook group. Catch you next time.